Right.
Hello. Yeah, Jin, you can start. It's live.
All right. Hey guys. Well, welcome to our third React meetup. Uh, Basically, it's a Penang React group is basically based in Penang, Georgetown. Started. This is our third meetup. First time doing online. The previous two times was all in Georgetown, based in 𝐬𝐿. Obviously, because of MCO, we're, we have to do it this way. But we do have very good topics coming up, and hopefully everybody can learn something today as well. Well, Facebook React is basically an initiative from Facebook dev circles that also started about the same time when React Penang started. So just want to say a big thank you to Facebook in general. So without further ado, let's get started with our first speaker, Matthew. Matthew is a senior developer as well as a project manager. I have the opportunity to work with Matthew a few months ago, and Matt is certainly a well-respected senior developer in the local community. So let's take it away.
Hi guys.
Okay, Matthew, you are live.
Okay. So yeah. I would like to. I mean, for this meetup, my sharing is revolved around this this framework, Next.js. Basically, it is sort of like a framework on top of a framework because React is a framework itself. But what cool about Next.js is that, you know, when you the main pain point when you develop React apps, right, is that the problem with SEO, because as you know, the bundle is loaded on the client, rendered on the client side, rather than the server side. So when crawlers and bots, you know, they find it hard to. I mean, if your React app is you want to have some, you want to allow Google and other search engine to index it. So that's the problem. So I mean, around React, you can do static generated sites, like you can use Gatsby and whatnot. But what special about Next.js is that it handles the server side rendering for you, and it can also generate static sites. If, let's say, for example, your page is purely static, right? You don't have any dynamic elements to it. So you can Next.js is smart enough to differentiate and split your application and render accordingly when whether this page is a dynamic page or this page is a static page. I mean, you guys can go to nextjs.org. Features, learn more. The documentation is extensive. You can see showcase all the companies that uses Next.js for their websites and whatnot. Also, you guys can go to the GitHub repo, and especially the example folder. You can see tons of examples. I mean, you guys can. I mean, whatever integration that is using headless CMS, authentication, and things like that. So you guys and so maybe I want to show you guys a quick demo of this of Next.js. I mean, I just cloned the default get started page and I just changed some of the things here. So as you can see, I'm now running live here. So this is basically a static page. So I'm showing you this, for example, is a dynamic page where it loads codes from another from an API. So as you can see, so this is the standard stuff, and this is the part where so this is the part where you enable the, I mean, for a start, I mean, Next.js has evolved over the times, and this is recently introduced, get server-side props. What it means is that this part will purely run on the server side, meaning whatever code that is here won't be part of the bundle that is loaded on the client side, right? So a simple code, and Next.js it has its own way to structure things. I mean, there are a few rules that you need to follow. For example, it has this pages folder where you need to put all your so-called pages or JS file under this folder. You cannot simply like put in another folder, right? But these are the convention that you need to follow if you want to use Next.js. So index is the home page or the index page. So if the page or path is basically is based on the naming of your file. So in this example, I put in /quote. So this is the index page. And this is the code page. So as you can see, when I reload the page, it will render a different code, because this is the part that I will get a random code each time the page renders. So, and the cool stuff about this is that, I mean, you can have zero configuration deployment using Vercel, a serverless static website hosting, just like Netlify. But again, this product, in a sense, that is started from this company, Vercel. I mean, formerly they call them 𝐬𝐿. Recently they rebranded the whole company. They raised some money and rebranded and became Vercel. So I'm going to show you a quick okay, so what I'm doing right now, I already linked up before all this to my GitHub repo, and again I already linked up to my Vercel account. So I've configured whenever I make a commit to the master branch, it will automatically deploy to Vercel. So as you can see, so there you go. So what I changed is the title Next.js demo for React Meetup Penang. So yeah, I guess basically that's about it. Next.js. So let me know if you guys have any questions.
Yep, we have a question here on the Facebook Live.
Right.
So do we need to pre-build Next.js file?
What's the question again? Oh, pre-built. I mean, but by default, if you're running on development, I mean, is the standard development process. It will auto reload and things like that. And yes, if you are doing your deployment yourself, like not using Vercel, you need to run next build. So it is part of the package.json file, as you can see, dev, build, and start. So this is the process where next we determine whether your page is a static page or a dynamic page. If it is static page, it will render all the static HTML page for you, so it never will hit the server. And you start your production build by running npm start. But if you're deploying on Vercel will handle those things automatically. What basically happens is that when the server side part code, it will turn into a serverless functions. So this is how Vercel handles the dynamic server part. Okay, what else is the question? So handle file permission. Basically there's no, I mean, okay, if you're doing a manual deployment, you can choose whether you want to put a web server or a reverse proxy, for example, Nginx, in front of your Next.js app. Basically, your Next.js app is just a Node app, right? You need Node.js to run. So, I mean, if you are putting Apache in front, yes, in a way you need to configure Apache, the htaccess and things like that. But if you are putting in, deploying on Vercel will handle that part automatically. You don't have to touch a single code. State management, okay, basically, Next.js comes with some goodies like routing and stuff. I mean, some of those stuff, but it doesn't come with state management. And I feel if you don't really need state management, you don't have to. But of course, if you go to the demo site, the Next.js/examples, you can see a lot of example integration with Redux, MobX, and whatnot. So yeah, feel free to explore and look at those examples if you guys interested, or if you guys really need that integration with state management and stuff like that. How flexible is for custom config? Okay, basically Babel is pre-configured, and to a certain extent, if you put in different, if you need different Babel plugins, for example, then let me go to the, yeah, I mean, that is this. So by default, this is the babel.rc file. So if you have additional plugins and whatnot, you can just install the plugin and configure it over here. But Babel comes with Next.js, part of the whole setup. Can you quickly show the deployment process? I bet I've shown the deployment process, but probably it's too fast, right? Okay, basically what I did is, I mean, to save time, right? What I did is previously I linked, okay, so you guys just need to go to vercel.com, sign up for an account, and it's totally free. Right? Then you just, there's this option for you to link your create a project and link directly to your GitHub repository. And if your GitHub repository is a Next.js project with the default configuration, Vercel will pick up all, I mean, will do the configuration automatically for you. You don't have to do anything. So whenever you commit to the master branch, or whatever branch that you pick, you want it to be part of the CI/CD, so it will deploy that branch to you for you automatically. So that's basically the deployment part is 0 once you set up the configuration. If you are deploying on Vercel, But of course, Next.js also supports using custom or your custom server. If you want to use Express.js, for example, to run Next.js, yes, you can. For whatever reason you want to do some configuration before it hits your Next.js application. If all are static page, do I still need the Node.js running? Yes. Sadly, yes. If this is you are using actually no. Basically, if 100% is static, then when you build, you can say that this is a static. Then you will have this .nextjs/static folder, which contains all your static pages. So in that sense, you can deploy that using, like, for example, Netlify.
Yep.
Okay, you can run this on an Express app and handle route permission via middleware. Yes, you can. This is part of the custom server. If you go to the you guys just need to go and explore the examples here. So with custom server Express, you can just look at how they configure the server.js file. So here if you need to do some routing on the server side, on the Express side, this is where you do it, and then you just pass over to your Next.js app. Right. I guess that's all the questions.
So yeah, thank you,
Okay.
Matthew.
No
Thank you,
worries.
Matthew, for sharing. Next will be inviting Andy to the stream. Let's welcome Andy. Okay, Andy. Yep.
Okay, so welcome everyone for the React Meetup today. So today I'll be presenting a topic called state management using Redux Observable. So before this, let me introduce myself first. So my name is Andy, and so my name is Andy. Currently, I'm a software developer at Life, so mostly working on backend and blockchain development. So I came across Redux Observable when my senior developer told me that there is one thing called reactive programming and how they can integrate reactive programming with Redux. So I went across with the Redux Observable and would like to share my experience on learning about Redux Observable. So the content flow for this will be we will be having very quick through the Redux recap. After that, we will move into the introduction to reactive programming, which is just very brief, talking about the concept of the observable and the subscriber. After that, we will move into the introduction to Redux Observable and specifically mentioning about epic, which is a function in Redux which takes an action and returns an action. So after that, we'll go into use case of the Redux Observable, and after that, we'll come to a conclusion. So so we'll go through the first part, which is the Redux recap. So what is Redux? So basically, for those who have been developing in React application, they should know that they provide a predictable, stable state container globally. So when an action is dispatched from the view, it runs through all the reducer function in the store and returns the new state. But for this Redux, as you all know, they only can run the synchronous action. So to run the side effect or make some asynchronous action, there are several middlewares available. For example, the famous one like redux-thunk, or the famous one like redux-saga or redux-promise. So today we will be discussing the one which is Redux Observable. Yep. So before discussing about Redux Observable, so we have to go through something, a new program. It's not a new, but it's a programming paradigm called reactive programming. So what is reactive programming? So reactive programming is a declarative programming paradigm which allows us to manage asynchronous data streams with function. So you can see, like, inside reactive programming, there's one a very important concept called observable. So what is observable is that it takes a data string, which data string can be from anywhere, any sources. Maybe it can like an event, or maybe like a message, or maybe like the API call for somewhere else, or maybe like a cancellation or something. So observable, it just takes the action from, take the data from somewhere and map it and execute it with the functions. Okay, so this reactive programming it was a theory, and how it actually apply to the application, because it doesn't really fit with the application with the languages like Java or Shift. So that's why they came with the one API called ReactiveX. So ReactiveX is an implementation of the reactive programming, and it is available for Java, Shift, and PHP. So today we will be discussing one called RxJS. So RxJS is a library extension of ReactiveX for JavaScript. So who is using ReactiveX? So you name it, they are Microsoft and Netflix and GitHub, Airbnb, and Trello. But most of the Redux Observable is actually an initiative from Netflix actually. So you can see that from this RxJS actually is growing quite expansively, quite exponentially with React Together, since this data was from year 2019. So observable is actually a lazy collection of multiple values of the time. So the important of the concept of this is lazy collection over the time period. So this is the concept. So we have an observable which takes which takes a data stream. So we have an observer which subscribe to the observable, and whenever there's a data come into observable, so it will give it to observer, and you will execute the following action like next, error, or complete. So you can think of it just like a pass sub model for those who are familiar. Just like one publisher will publish the data to the subscriber, and the subscriber will execute the function inside the subscriber. So this is actually an example of the observable. So as you can see, we declare observable with this observable. So whenever there's a subscriber, so we will send hello to the subscriber, and after that we will send a row to the subscriber. So whenever there's a subscriber we subscribe to this observable, so it will execute, you will do the action for this action inside here. So for example, for this you can see there's a hello, and we'll print out. For this observable, it can be run synchronously or asynchronously, so you have to be aware of that as well. So for this, this is another example. So as you can see, usually for those who declare observable, they will have a $sign behind to declare to denote that actually this is a data string instead of a fixed data. So at first you'll go through, whenever there's a subscriber, it will go through the next with the first data, and will go to a second data, and there's a set timeout here which will execute after 1 second last data, and then the data after completion in 1 second. And after that, it will go to the third data. So what we will do actually after that, there's a subscribe to this observable, you will execute the next with this console log. So you can see that actually the first will come with the first data, and then the second data. Since there's a timeout, so it will come out after 1 second. So the next one will be third data. After that, you will be going through after 1 second less data, and then after complete. So you can see that there's one subscribe complete here. So once it complete, the next action will be ignore after that. So that's why you won't see there's a data after completion, but there's only one complete instead. Okay, so the application of it is usually basically like retrieve data from a database and filter result based on user setting, because for this retrieve data, usually it's more like a asynchronous action. So you have to wait about like for a database to find the data or something. So it's the use case as well. So there's another one is show autocomplete search and data visualization, which needs some asynchronous update from the server or the database. And there's a real-time data of the stock price in stock market. Okay, so here is a very, very brief introduction to reactive programming. So after that, we will move into the Redux Observable, which is the implementation of reactive programming in Redux. So as you can see from the graph on the right-hand side, so the first, So this is actually a little bit different from the redux-thunk. So redux-thunk actually it comes before the reducer. For this redux observable, actually it comes after it goes to a reducer. So whenever there's an action dispatched to the store, so the reducer will process the action. After that, you're only go into redux observable. So you can see there's one thing called epic. So what is epic? So later I will explain to your detail why it's epic. So as you all know, Redux Observable is actually an implementation of reactive programming. So basically more on the RxJS itself to work on with the asynchronous action. So from here, epic is actually a function which takes a stream of action and returns a stream of action, which execute the action like actions in and action out. So whatever action it come in, it will eventually return an action. Yep. So all the dispatch action will go into the action stream, and epics will run alongside the normal redux dispatch channel after the reducer have already received them. So you cannot solo them into the incoming action. Action will always run through your reducer before your epic start to receive them. So once you install epic, so you can use any observable pattern you desire as long as any output from the final. So the return stream will always be an action for this epic. So for this epic, actually is like once there is an action, it will go into epic and then we will return our action. So for this, you can see there's an epic called ping epic. So it receives the action stream. So it will check whether there's a type of the ping and will delay 1 second. After that, you will map to call this action creator call type. So there is another use case in epic, which is filter action. So as you can see, there is a sample epic here. So it will take the action and just take as a parameter. So it will go through pipe. So this pipe is actually a operator from RxJS. If you want to know more later, we'll share the link with you all. So it will go through the basically the pipe will go through all the operators inside the pipe. So first it will go through the filter, which will filter the action which has a payload of the age more than 18 years old, more than 18. So after that, it will map the value to call the action creator with this creator called above 18 by sending the value to it. So another example is that we can make adjust request in Redux Observable, but first we'll go through how does it look like in redux-thunk. So this is actually the redux-thunk request. So it will go through a dispatch. After that, first it will go through a dispatch by get comment in progress. After that, it will go through the get request from this URL. Once it receives a response, then we'll dispatch the action, which is called get comment success. But if it's failed, then we'll go through the get comments fail. So how does it look like in Redux Observable? So in Redux Observable, we will create an epic which subscribe to which receive the action stream and the state. So in the pipeline, you can see it only limited to the type with which the get comments. After that, it will go through a merge map, which this merge map is actually another IS operator. It's a little bit hard to explain, but later I can share. I'll explain to you once after this has finished. So it will go through this request first to get the response. So when it gets the response, it will directly call to the get comment success. And if there's an error, they will catch error with this operator and will call the action called get comments fail. So start with is operator which indicates that from this pipe, everything will start with this operator first with the start with. So once we have this epic, so the overall action creator will be much more cleaner compared to redux-thunk. So once we come to a conclusion, we actually is that Redux Observable is actually an alternative middleware in Redux to compose and cancel and sync action to create side effects. One thing that comes to my mind is that the reactive programming and RxJS is actually a little bit difficult to get hands-on. But once if you can understand reactive programming, actually it's quite easy to implement it into Redux Observable. So what I suggest that Observable is recommended to learn because Observable type is proposed to be a part of the MR script library. as far as I know, they currently are still progressing, so quite active as well. So, and then observable is not only limited in only JavaScript, but you can transfer your skill once you get the concept. So it's available in another language as well. So such as IS Java, IS Shift, or IS PHP. So also is implemented in another front-end libraries such as Vue, RS, or after Angular 2. So here there are the trainings which can give you some information about what is reactive programming and Redux Observable. So yep, so that's all from me. So yep.
From there, but if you're not seeing it, probably the first one is like, is the $sign compulsory for a variable name?
Usually it's not a compulsory, but it's recommended to indicate that actually is action string instead of an action.
So we can go to the next question.
So 𝐸 RS.
It's actually from me. While you were reading, while you were explaining it just then.
Okay.
But I guess questions was tongue was basically just to handle more side effects things. But it seems like, to me, based on the presentation, observable can actually replace tongue. And what are your thoughts from there?
For those who have been understanding about what is reactive programming and the RxJS, actually is quite, it becomes more handy for you to actually to apply Redux Observable instead of redux-thunk, because Redux Observable actually you can see from the code actually is quite cleaner and simpler code, and it's more readable compared to redux-thunk. So for now, I'm not sure whether they can be coexist together, because they are trying to compare between, like, they're going to fight between redux-thunk and Redux Observable. But basically, they are trying to fight over Redux Observable instead of redux-thunk, because it's much more cleaner and simpler compared to redux-thunk once you get the concept of reactive programming.
Right. I think the stream is basically about 10 seconds left, which is very standard for Facebook Live and YouTube Live anyway. So if there's no questions, we can move on to the next big article. But if there's any question, you guys can keep posting. I'm sure Andy, even Malcolm will be very helpful to answer them on Facebook or on YouTube. Yeah. All right, thank you. Thanks, Andy. Really enjoy your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. The next one will, cheers. Thanks. Next one we'll have Malcolm. Malcolm is actually a co-organizer from React.KL. Personally, I had an opportunity to watch a couple of your presentations a couple of weeks ago. Definitely very informative. So let's go ahead. I'll hand the screen to you.
Okay. Hi everyone. So today I want to talk about. Can you share my screen? I want to talk about Redux Toolkit. So it's a tools to simplify your Redux code. So first, this is called Redux Code Generator. It's an application I write two years back for me to like simplify my Redux code. Not really simplify, but generate code. So many times we realize actually our Redux code is very it's like there's a lot dependency. Yeah, you want to change one thing, you have to change multiple files. So many times you have an actions key, you have an action creator, then you have a reducer, then you have selectors, then you have some tests. So the time I create this application for me to generate all the code. For example, now initial state I have a name, and then after that, this application actually helped me to generate a action key called set name. Then after that, it generate a action creator called set name also, and then we have reducer. Then we have our initial state. Then after that, we have a reducer action key set name. Yeah. So this is what I written a few years back, because the time I don't have better options. And yeah, you as you can see, is a very very problematic a bit because yeah, you want to change one files, you have to change multiple place, and that's why people like say they hate Redux because of this thing. So now what I'm showing on the screen is the source code for this application. Guys, a bit meta. I have a Redux code that generate Redux code. So but as you can see, this on the left we have this folder called Redux, and then after that we have action keys, we have actions, then we have reducer, then we have root reducer, the standard stuff lah. Then action keys we have like set initial state. Then after the actions, I use the set initial state. I have an action creator. Then after that, I reducer. I use these action keys to know what to do. Standard stuff. And today I want to introduce you this library called Redux Toolkit, and it will actually help us to simplify all this code. So to show you, let's go to Redux Toolkit website. So Redux Toolkit is official supported library abstraction for Redux because it is maintained by a guy called Mark something. He is actually the current core maintainer for Redux. So yeah, this is a website, redux-toolkit.js.org. So there are many abstractions that help you. For example, it gives the default configure store, and it gives you a few functionality for you to do abstraction, which you can go read yourself. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Redux Toolkit to simplify my code. Okay, so now I have so many files, right? And first thing what I'm going to do is the simplest one. Most of the time we have this thing, right? Configure store, which we pass in our root reducer. Then we add some Redux. We have some Redux compose, all this stuff. So before this presentation, I install this Redux toolkit. So it's alias redux.js toolkit. So now in my configure store, what I can do is I can import from this Redux toolkit. So it actually gives us a function called configure store. So yeah, actually I do not even need this function anymore because I can just go to my index.js and I can actually import. I can import my Redux toolkit here, and then configure store, and then after that I can import my reducer. So configure store is required to pass in a reducer key, so you pass in a root reducer. Okay, then I save, and then my application restart. So it's taking some time to compile. I wonder why. Yeah, it's okay. I don't want to start here. We will proceed to other part. So the first thing is actually it gives us a common setup. So based on the statistics, right? Actually they know the most popular middleware is actually a redux-thunk. So just now Andy presented about Redux Observable, but the most popular is the redux-thunk. So by default, this configure store actually help us to set up a redux-thunk as well as set up the dev tools that we use very commonly in Redux application. So yeah, you no longer need to write your own abstraction. But this is a small thing. This is not very impressive. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to abstract all this thing away. So I'm going to create one thing called redux.slice. Okay. So a slice is actually a combination of all the actions and reducer. So now I'm going to import from Redux toolkit to import create slice. Okay, so I'm going to create a Redux slice. So the reason I call Redux slice because my state is actually called Redux because I have Redux reducer, Redux actions. So now I create a Redux slice. So I need to give you a name, and I need to give you an initial state. Create slice. Initial state. So what is this initial state? Because in reducer we always have our initial state, right? So this is the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy paste this. Let me paste it here. Okay. So I'm going to part the initial. So this initial state is what we have in our reducer initial state. Then after that is our reducer. Okay. So our reducer here we have 3 actions keys and 3 actions. So what I'm going to do here, when you create a slice, right, it will create a reducer and your actions together. How it achieve that is we need to define a reducer's key. Something very wrong with my. Let me reload my window. Yeah, actually there's a. Okay, so let me see. Okay, this thing still works. We set name, everything is still there. Okay, I come back to here. So we have a reducer. So in reducer, how we define is we define actions keys and iterate through. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say like set redux initial state, right? Because this is our action keys. So this is a key function object. So I call set redux initial state. Then this function will accept a state, and then after that it will accept action. So it's just a reducer lah. Then our action here, we know it is an action of a string, right? So because I'm using, oh yeah, I know why. Because I write wrong code. So here I'm using TypeScript. So I'm going to tell TypeScript that this action is the action payload is a string. So I can import this type helper from Redux toolkit called payload action. Then we can say payload action is a string. Okay. So now previously in our reducer, what I do is we set the initial state to the action payload, right? And in here, I just call state dot initial state equal to action dot payload. Okay, so one thing to note is you realize, hey, this create slice looks a bit weird. The function here is a bit weird because our reducer, most of the time, our reducer should be a pure function, right? We don't update our state. We always return a new state. But this Redux toolkit, it is using libraries called 𝐬𝐬. So you can just go search 𝐬𝐬.js. So this 𝐬𝐬.js is people, someone they create this helper for us to write immutable code easily. So what it does is actually when you use 𝐬𝐬, normally you need to like return the state, then you spread the state, right? You just write mutating code. It will actually help you to convert to immutable code. So the code is we no need there's so many spread. So now I'm going to continue to finish my another two functions, set redux store prefix. So here this is we set the store prefix, and then thirdly is set redux language. Okay, so language. Okay, so we have this Redux slides, and then we define all our actions and everything. So what this Redux slice is doing is it will actually give us two things. So the first thing it will give us is Redux slice dot actions. So the first thing it will give us is actions. So you may think, hey, here we define our reducer, where these actions comes from. So the thing about this Redux toolkit, right? This create slice is it will infer your actions from what you set here. So now in Redux action, right, we can actually have this set Redux initial state. We have set Redux language, set Redux store prefix. It's purely based on the key we provided here. Okay. Other than that, it also gives us the reducer. So Redux reducer equal to Redux slice. So it gives us both actions and reducer. So now in my code, my root reducer, I no longer import from the Redux reducer. I import from this Redux slice. So Redux reducer. Right. So then actions. So I need to replace all the code they're using action today with my new. So everything is used here. So I'm instead of import the previous manually defined actions, here I'm going to get all the actions in a single key. And then in my code, I can do Redux actions. Okay, so we go back to our Redux code generator. So everything is still working fine. But the cool thing now we can see, right, is previously you can see on the left, we have actions key, action, reducer. We have three things to define our actions and reducer. Now we have just a Redux slice, and it would just help us to declare everything in one shot, which is for me is actually it removed the biggest pain point of using Redux. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna share today. So there are actually a few other utilities from Redux toolkit. Like recently they create a new one, create entity adapter, which I haven't explored yet. But for me, this create slice is actually make me feel like Redux code is actually no longer very hard to write. So yeah, I think that's all from me.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Malcolm. We'll see if there's any more questions coming in.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for that, so is actually, I'm just wondering, right? So
Yeah.
obviously Redux is a very advanced. It's a kind of vital thing when you write React, but like in your opinion, right? How do you decide when to use Redux and all when you start a project?
How I decide? For me is most project I started, right, if it's a side project, I will try to avoid Redux because it's kind of painful to write previously. And even though now with this Redux toolkit, right, it's still a bit boilerplate we need to write because we need to do the map states, map dispatch, all this kind of stuff. So for me now, actually the Redux I will only use when I have a lot client-side logic. For example, like I need to, like in one of my previous company, we have a kind of a bit complex logic where we have a list of stock for many products, and then after that, people can pick one items, and then you need to like determine on the client side how many stock has left. Yeah, so you have this kind of complex client-side logic. Only I think the Redux is necessary. Else, I realized many times people use Redux. It's just actually for catch. What I'm trying to say is they make API call to server and then they store in the Redux store, and then they navigate to different page. They want to make sure that data is still there. If that is your use case, actually, in one of my previous webcasts, I actually introduced one thing called React Query, and it is a very good tool for us to manage server-side catch.
That was the one that I attended to. Definitely very informative. Yeah, we have questions from 𝐬𝐢𝐻. You can see the screen here.
Yeah. With the Redux slice, how do you unit test on the Redux flow you defined just now? Okay, so how do I unit test? So it depends on. So there are two questions here, lah. First is how do I unit test this function, and secondly is my question is that should you even write this unit test? So the first thing is how do you write unit tests? The thing is what is your previous unit test? Because most of the time for reducer, our unit test is we have a reducer, and then we pass in the actions into that reducer, right? And now in the code, the Redux slice just now I showed, it actually return you the actions and the reducer as well. So you can still use these two things to unit test your code. There's no difference. The second part of the question is, should you write this kind of unit test? And I think you shouldn't. So for me, I don't like to write state management kind of testing because it's kind of manual, because you need to manually call the functions, all those stuff. And secondly, it actually didn't verify, right, how you integrate with this state management. So what I usually do is I use the React testing library, and I actually test. I will render the whole application connected with Redux, and I just interact with the UI, and then I check verify the output. So if you're interested, again, you can go to 𝐶𝐿 React. I have one previous webcast I talked about how to write tests in React. Yeah, I think this is the second question. For newbie who just get started from learning Redux, do you recommend to use toolkit from day one or learn the hard way before start using the toolkit? I would say learn. If for learning, right, I think you should just learn the Redux, because for me Redux is not very hard. It's just tedious to write. So yeah, you should understand what Redux actually is, and then you use this library to avoid the tediousness of keep writing all those code. So I think for Redux, right, the time I learned the tutorial that actually made clicks for me is 𝐻𝐻.io. They have an intro to Redux by Dan Abramov himself. Yeah, for that, in that 𝐻𝐻.io session, he actually writes from scratch Redux. So that's actually made me realize, hey, actually Redux is not so complex. So yeah, you can go have a look at that tutorial. The next question, how well is it when integrated with other middlewares? So by default, so the thing is, right, first thing is this Redux toolkit, right, it is still just now I use a create slice. It still export you actions and a reducer. So the actions and reducer here is no difference with the manual written actions and reducer that you write. So it will still works. So this is the first thing. The second thing is, but if I want to integrate with other middleware, so just now I have a here I have a configure store from Redux toolkit, right? So this Redux toolkit actually by default it will configure with redux-thunk. And if you want to integrate with other middleware, it actually allows you to customize it. That it has a middleware options that you can pass it into, then you can pass in other middleware. So yeah, it still works. For me, this abstraction, I see many abstraction of Redux, and some of them is actually like over-engineer, and it makes you hard to write something that is not as per their expectation. Redux Toolkit is really well abstract. I actually think if you can actually start using this start migrating your code into Redux Toolkit today, because you no need to use everything. You can just use part of your store, your actions and reducer. You can migrate one part of it, just like what I showed you just now.
Very interesting. We're probably running out of time. Let's see if we have one more question. Well, if there's none, is actually Redux Toolkit production ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So they actually version like 1 point something it is. So yeah, they are officially supported.
How was like? I assume you definitely have tons of experience using that for at least quite some time, right? And has that actually changed the way you write Redux in general? Definitely make it easier. Is there anything else?
It make it easier, and it makes it like I am more happy to change code in Redux. Previously, is like it's really pain in the ass. Now I just change one place and it would just trigger all the actions and reducer change. So definitely. and one more thing is really nice is because it is declare everything in a single function. So the TypeScript definition is really nice. Like previously, I need to define the types in reducer and actions and make sure they are in line. But now, because it is declared in a single function, it will actually know, it will make sure these two are actually aligned to each other. So yeah, it's really removed a lot of boilerplate that I have to manually maintain previously.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah, I guess we're running out of time. So thank you, Malcolm. I'm sure people have any questions, we'll just post on our group. You can answer them. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. Thanks all three speakers. Well, just want to probably miss it when we started. React Penang is a group funded, not funded, sorry, there's no funded involved, but it's actually started with a bunch of React developers. Basically, it's an initiative from Facebook developer circles, so we really appreciate it. But basically, it's run by community. We do events from time to time. We kind of do it 3 months ago. We wanted to have more topics in one session at once. So, but we do. If you're interested in giving talks, or even if you are interested in organizing the event, whether it's live or whether it is whether it's online or in physical, you can contact us. Just post something on the group, then we'll respond. Yeah, it's on Facebook. Facebook, if you just look it up, React Penang, I'm sure you'll find it. So again, really appreciate everybody's joining. I'll pass the mic to 𝐸𝐸. 𝐸𝐸 is the leader of the DevC in Penang. So 𝐸𝐸, take away. Thanks, guys.
Hi. So thank you for joining us on the React Meetup. So there's a couple of news that I want to share. So let's open that. Let's see whether. There's a DevC fellowship going around. Let me share it correctly. Okay, so there's a DevC fellowship program run by MLH. So I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so the deadline is actually May 24th, I guess. May 24th. So to apply, this is a paid internship, or you can call it fellowship, where you get to work on open source projects and get to know mentors that's actually contributing to open source framework, and you get paid for it. So for Malaysia, originally MLH and GitHub is not allowing Malaysia to participate, but since we have DevC circle in Malaysia, so under the DevC program, you are allowed to join. For this one, and then the next one will be the hackathon. So Facebook hackathons for this year, there's 3 topics that you can participate in. First is AI, the next one is AR, And third one is messaging. So this is a global hackathon. You will get some swags. If not mistaken, you will get Bluetooth speaker by just joining. So please take this opportunity to practice your skills and join this hackathon, form a team, work on the project, and see what you can do, right? So for the meetup, we'll be giving out 20 ringgit KFC vouchers later on for those members that able to answer the quiz as the fastest time and it was correct. So yeah, thank you everyone. I think get back to Jian.
Oh, all right. Well, no, just thank you guys. I also want to give a couple of shout outs to the main organizer today for this session, 𝐬𝐢𝐿, and also a big help from Nathan, all from React Penang. Yeah, so thank you guys. We look forward to the next session. We'll keep it in the 1 hour mark, probably 2 minutes behind, 1 minute over, but we'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys. See you.